So it's clear we've been talking about Wes Watson for what feels like forever on this channel, and he's just way too easy to make content about, unfortunately. He's a lol cow. He just literally produces hilarious content 24/7. I'm sorry. And I'm truly at my end for this. I think this is likely one of the last videos, if not the last video I'll make on Wes Watson, unless something absolutely preposterous happens and I must absolutely cover it. But I'm done with his character. I don't want the channel to be all about the individual, nor those individuals. So we're gonna move on after this video. This video actually will be a little bit different. At the end of the day, this was a fitness-oriented channel, and I am a coach at the end of the day. And I try to really not put hard lines on the kind of content I create, but I do often deviate when I feel necessary. However, I am a coach after all, and I talk often about steroids, diets, training. This stuff is great. I love doing it. I love helping people get better. I love helping people get jacked, fit, super healthy. It's fun. It's great. And it's actually, for me, really engaging work. However, there's only so much you can say about it. After a while, it kind of just burns out and everything's been said multiple times over again. But I figured I'm going to utilize those skills after, I don't know, years of acquiring them. And so it might be the time to do that, specifically with Wes Watson. Let's me and you just apply a little bit of critical thinking on who Wes Watson is and figure out exactly what he's taking for a steroid cycle.
Wes Watson have responded. Really frame himself into the center of the shot, or who was formerly convicted, claims to have spent more time than he actually did there, rents out his house, cars, and women, while pretending it's all his.
Oh, I'm Kirk. I'm good enough to make a sale.
They're getting good douched every day. People, I mean, that one guy, Wes Watson.
I heard you bump into a famous YouTuber.
You guys are not men. Why is my vagina so stinky?
Oh my God!
There's a whole group of weirdos on the internet, but they come back like 10 deep and they pull me out. They obviously want to see my butthole. He has a 7-inch banger hanging out of fucking ass when they strip us out.
Watson, ex-convict, self-proclaimed alpha male, and next-level gym cell, is now speed-running his way to becoming the internet's latest and greatest lol cow.
And whoa. You're thinking, Coach Kolton, he's never said he's on steroids. In fact, he claimed he doesn't take steroids. And I would tell you, you're a idiot if you think he's not taking steroids. And of course he's gonna say he's not gonna take steroids because the man is a fucking felon. He doesn't want anyone to know that he's taking illegal substances. And just for anyone who's in the law enforcement, by any chance of the I don't know, you're just stumbling across this video, whatever. He carries a firearm in his man purse, and he's a felon. So if you want an easy case to crack, that's one you could go after. However, let's get right into it. First thing we have to look at is physical characteristics. Certain anabolics provide a certain type of phenotype or representation of their use in males and females, but that's less fortunate. This is because each steroid has its kind of peculiar side effect. Now, when we talk about anabolics, we do have different types of anabolics. There's testosterone derivatives, there's 19-nortestosterone derivatives, there is dihydrotestosterone derivatives, then there's 17 alkylated variants of all of these types of derivatives, so you have a lot to play with. Oral steroids provide a much more dramatic shift in physical appearance and outward muscle size immediately, not permanently, whereas injectables are more of a long-term thing. You're signing up for the real deal. Their effects aren't as immediate, but much more solidified and just as real as the ones you'd see from any oral steroid. So putting this into practice, let's depict a little bit about what Wes is doing here. So he has really leathery skin, which he says is because it's the shit he's been through, the experience. He even says if a man doesn't have leathery skin, you don't trust him because he hasn't been through shit. I think that's a fucking atrocious way to look at another man, but hey, whatever. I actually think it's more to a kin of reckless behavior and poor care for health. This is really important. The skin is an organ, and functionally, if you are unhealthy and misusing your body, your organs will likely deteriorate, as does your skin. He also has very reddish, purplish hued skin. This is something you often see in bodybuilders and people like Liver King.
I don't touch the stuff, not gonna touch the stuff, never touch the stuff. That was a lot.
Especially when he was at his biggest. If you just look back like 2 years ago, you'll notice it like crazy. The genetic anomaly kid is another really great example of this. He shows it off all the time on camera. And a third really important point is his almost nasty vascularity. Huge veins across his chest and arms, and this is by him a preferred look By many, honestly, it's a preferred look. But when you aren't lean, which he's definitely not lean, you have to be a little bit concerned for your health, and we'll talk about this. Now, as a final trait, his behavioral features are a bit concerning as well. He's often quite irrational and volatile. He also expresses immediate shifts in behaviors when someone talks poorly about him. This one is most identical, and I guess you could stratify it with roid rage. All right, all that stuff aside, we're going to now try to keep each trait in its own little category and then distinctly figure out which product of steroids he's using to initiate those kind of cascades, or that phenotype, or that physical outward appearance. First of all, the leathery skin. This is quite inherent of oxidative stress. You see this in so many people who have high degrees of inflammation and oxidative stress, from whether they're using drugs and alcohol, steroids at a copious degree, or just not taking care of their body. And all steroids do this. They cause some degree of oxidative stress. So it's not really fair to say which steroid he would exactly be using just based off this alone. To be very clear, achieving this look in one's skin does take a higher degree of anabolic steroids. He's not using anything conservative by any means. We usually see this phenotype kind of develop around people who are using, 600 to 1,000 plus milligrams of anabolic steroids combined. And just as a reference here, about 120 to 150 milligrams is your average testosterone replacement dose. So they're exceeding that dose by about 10 times. This, in my mind, would be an assortment of anabolics, but the prison variety of anabolics. From ex-cons that I've spoken with and worked with as a coach, I've learned a lot on what kind of gear you can get on the inside of a penitentiary. The only problem was you could get it, but then how do you take it? Because these things go through via intramuscular injections. You need a sterile environment, you need a non-reusable needle because they aren't reusable, and a syringe. Bypassing that, which there's some horrible stories there, you would typically see something in the penitentiary like testosterone, equipoise, and trenbolone. Tren is a 19-nor derivative. It's probably the one that has the most infamy out of all anabolic steroids. It is also the most unstable, volatile compound that you can take as a bodybuilder when it relates to the hormones that we have to our ability to use. From head to toe, it is clearly the worst thing you can take. It is horrible, not just for physiological health, but your psychological health, circulatory function, penile function. It is awful. It also causes the most oxidative stress out of any anabolic steroid that we have in our arsenal. And I say we like I'm actively using steroids. I stopped using them a while ago. Basically just been using testosterone and growth hormone lately. So let me rephrase what most bodybuilders and fitness influencers are using. The other one we're talking about here is equipoise, EQ, or boldenone, all the same thing. This is the horse steroid. It was a steroid that basically got its popularity for being used in horses, and to this day still is. Oftentimes bodybuilders would go to veterinarians to get their weekly supply of anabolics, that deriving itself of EQ, equipoise. Equine being the reason that the drug is named equipoise. Equine means horse, you get it. Also, it's a testosterone derivative, so it's basically the same carbon chain as testosterone, just with a few modifications on it which make it a completely different compound. It has a very unique feature of increasing hematocrit and hemoglobin quite dramatically. Those things, just to keep it very simple, increase oxygen carrying capacity of red blood cells, but they also increase viscosity of blood, making it much more syrupy versus fluidy. As you can think of, that's probably not a great situation. This being exactly what we're going to touch on now, his purplish and reddish skin. Because of the hue of Wes' skin, it's very clear that underneath there is hypertension, high red blood cell accumulation, and maybe some other issues. You can see this often in young influencers, fitness influencers, who are abusing steroids, that they develop this rare degree of vascularity and, like I mentioned before, the purplish reddish hue of their skin. The genetic anomaly guy is perfect for this. I would imagine that just taking these few things into consideration, Wes is taking something like 300 to 400 milligrams of testosterone weekly, probably 300 to 500 milligrams of equipoise weekly, and then a whopping 200 milligrams of trenbolone weekly. However, that is nowhere near all of it. From my understanding, what at least ex-cons have told me, it was very easy to acquire oral steroids, just because getting something that's not in a vial and can come in pill forms, pretty easy to get through the guards or something like that. I've not been to prison, I just served my country, so who knows. What I heard though is especially D-bol was quite easy to acquire. It's an archaic oral steroid that isn't the best in terms of what I would ever use in somebody. For my coaching purposes, it's in the chest that I'll never use again, and it's forever shut. This specific oral steroid steroid, being that it is a 17-alkylated version of testosterone, can cause an amazing and rapid increase in blood pressure and pulmonary hypertension. There's no studies to clarify this. This is just through practical application in my coaching catacombs, the deep and dark file cabinet that I keep of every client I've ever coached for history of times. I honestly think I've accumulated enough data on people doing different things that I could classify myself as a very good researcher, or maybe not. A psychopath may be fitting as well. This hypertension and pulmonary hypertension is going to certainly increase the redness of the skin. Now, the veins are a bit interesting here because blood pressure certainly can impact the veins, and by all means, blood viscosity can likely do that as well. But there's one drug that I think very explicitly causes this effect, for veins to come forward into the skin as opposed to interlying muscle, as opposed to down underneath more layers of tissue. And again, no direct science here to back this up. This is just tangible experience. I do research things heavily, more than most people on YouTube would probably ever know, but my clients are very well aware. I just know that application doesn't always relate to what science has to say. And sometimes you can lose yourself in the weeds of science without actually having any application, which is just kind of putting the cart before the horse. Anyways, equipoise.
I do love you, by the way. I mean, as much as I'm capable of loving anyone, which is never.
Clearly increases vascularity. I see it all of the time. It's almost an immediate effect after a few short weeks of implementing its, well, deployment. Now, of course, Wes Watson is bald too. He's bald.
Can I look in the mirror and admire the man that's staring back at me?
He lost all his hair after shortly getting out of prison and lost a lot more of it in prison, which further supports my belief that he was abusing stuff then. This is caused by androgens inducing what is called hair follicle miniaturization. This inevitably leads to permanent balding, or the permanent loss of a hair follicle. But I do still think that Wes is doing more. As wealthy as he is bound to be using growth hormone. I mean, he's got Bugattis. He's got to have some fucking Serastims on hand. This is very, very, very commonly used within bodybuilding, as well as an assortment of tons of other peptides. Now, there really isn't clear representation in terms of physical appearance when one uses growth hormone. You do develop slightly more inflamed hands. If you go back in my videos, let's say about a year's time, and look at my hands, they are quite a bit bigger than they are now. And that's just due to local inflammation or water retention causing that to happen. But also there's some prolonged things that you garner from using growth hormone for, again, a long duration of time. You grow cartilage, your ears kind of get a little bit bigger, your nose gets a little bit longer, and your head does seem to grow. Everyone's very clear on the fact that that doesn't happen, yet everyone I've ever had on GH or myself has lost the ability to wear normal sized hats. And shoes. Oh man, the shoes go crazy. And if you look at Wes, he's got these really chunky meat knuckles. Like, they're crazy, right? It's not because he beat someone in the face with it. I doubt he's ever punched a soul, honestly. He probably would get his ass rocked, but he has these chunky meat knuckles from probably using growth hormone in conjunction with things like D-ball that are going to cause rapid accumulation of water retention. So basically what we have on deck is testosterone at a moderate dose of 300 to 400, maybe 500 milligrams, equipoise at around that dose as well. It might be a 1-to-1 ratio because that's usually what the old school bro lore told everyone to do. And then I would suggest that I would think that West would have some degree of trenbolone in there, probably around 200 milligrams, because again, the old schoolers kind of thought that anything less than 200 was not really efficacious. And then of course D-ball, because that's probably just his favorite. It does make you feel euphoric. You get great training pumps on it, but the health complications as well as the methyl estradiol, just not worth the risk. It's just a horrible oral steroid to take. Just don't take it. And then we have a little bit of growth hormone on the side, as well as probably some other peptides. Now, of course, Wes has two reasons why he's not talking about this. One, because he's a felon. He would go to prison for just about anything. Two, he is running a coaching business. So why would he want to tell people hiring him in that coaching business, fitness coaching and business coaching and life coaching, apparently, that he's running steroids and that's how he's accumulating his results? He wouldn't. He would lose business probably. People would probably start to judge him a little bit differently and then claim that his figure of hard work ethic and solitude is definitely not what he's making it out to seem. But with all all the D-ball and testosterone that he's running, you can bet your ass that his real nickname is Westrogen, short for estrogen, if you didn't pick that up. I hope you picked it up.